to get into. But I want to start, Howard, with the big transaction news this past week. And you don't get a lot of transactions in the final couple of months of the season, but the Bucks, they made some noise. They have signed Jrue Holiday to a 4-year, $135 million contract. That's a contract that can be worth as much as $160 million, the full max on a 4-year deal. Holiday, of course, acquired from multiple first-round draft picks last offseason from the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, the Bucks have decided they're going all in, Howard, on this core. Giannis signed to a supermax. You've got Chris Middleton signed to a long-term max deal. Jrue Holiday now locked into a long-term max-level deal. This is the group. This is the core of this team. What did you think of the Bucks' decision to lock up Holiday long-term?
It was inevitable. Like, that's the first thing. The first reaction is, oh, didn't they already do this? No, they hadn't gotten to it yet. Okay, now they have. Because we expected it, right? Like, from the moment that the Bucks acquired Jrue Holiday, given the picks and players that they had to send out just to get him, given the commitment that they were making to Giannis, who they, of course, signed to his max extension, his super max, before the season, everything that follows that is about keeping faith with your franchise star. Oh, you need other stars. Well, we can't get the super duper stars, but we can get, we can keep Chris Middleton and we can max him out. We can get a Jrue Holiday, and wink, wink, we all know we're going to have to max him out with an extension because he's a pending free agent. And that's, by the way, one of the reasons New Orleans wanted to offload him, because they did not want to pay Jrue Holiday a max deal at this stage of his career. But, it's a different standard for every team. The Pelicans are young and rising, and the Bucks are all in, need to win it all now because they've got Giannis. Like, so for the Pelicans, a max investment in Jrue Holiday may not make that much sense. For the Bucks, it absolutely does. And look, Chris, we can quibble. Fans can quibble. Other teams and executives could quibble, perhaps, with whether or not it's wise to extend Jrue Holiday at this price, 32 million, 30, 32, 35, 37, which I believe are the numbers of the estimates right now on that deal. And given he's moving into his mid-30s or early to mid-30s, he'll be in his mid-30s by the time this is over. Like, could it backfire? Of course. Could the picks that they sent out to get him in the first place backfire? Of course. That's not the framework. The framework is not, is Jrue Holiday worth a max? Most guys in the NBA aren't worth the max. A lot of guys who have the max are not actually worth the max. But you do what you have to put together a team that can contend. When you have Giannis in his prime, you have no choice. I've got some other thoughts on this, but I want to hear what you have to think. But I do think that there's no part of this to me that is either surprising or controversial.
No, not surprising. And Jrue Holiday's played well in the games he's played for Milwaukee. I want to throw some numbers at you as we continue this discussion. His net rating is plus 11.9 with the Bucks. That's second best among their two-player combinations. Team assists per 100 possessions, Jrue on the floor, 26.1. That leads the team. Offensive rating with Jrue on the court, 117.4. With Jrue off the court, 106.8. So that's a big number. There's a whole host of statistics. There's a whole host of statistics that Milwaukee sent me to exemplify the positives of Jrue Holiday. But to your point, even if the numbers weren't that good, the Bucks had to do this because they couldn't risk Jrue Holiday becoming a free agent this summer and deciding he wanted to play somewhere else. The market would have been robust for Jrue Holiday. Maybe he wouldn't have been able to get that 4-year max contract from another team, but he would have gotten a good deal. And the Bucks simply couldn't risk that given what they have surrendered to get him in a Milwaukee uniform. They have Giannis. They have Chris Middleton, but they know they can't win anything without Jrue Holiday in that mix. So what they did doesn't necessarily guarantee them anything, really. Doesn't guarantee them a trip out of the second round, quite frankly. But this was their only option, tying Jrue Holiday up long term.
Yeah, and look, just because you've already got Giannis to agree and he's already signed his supermax, doesn't mean you can afford to start now dicking around. Like, no, he's not going to demand a trade after the season if you didn't re-sign Jrue Holiday, if you let him walk away, and if you failed in the first round or second round, whatever, Giannis is probably not demanding a trade. But the idea is to maximize every year of his career in his prime, because when you have a special player, that's your burden, that's your obligation, your responsibility to that player. Maximize their potential the whole way. Now, that also means not investing badly, of course. Don't tie yourself up with bad players or average players and overpay. Like, you still have to be judicious. It's not saying just spend money just to do it and just because Giannis wants it. It's just saying that you have to make calculated bets all along the way. And we know, Chris, that in this league, the traditional conventional model for winning championships is get LeBron and hopefully have Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh next to him. And if you don't have them, maybe you've got Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving, or now you've got Anthony Davis next to him. That's the model. Two superstars, 3 stars. Not everybody can do that. There aren't enough stars to go around, and those stars are, generally speaking, going to coalesce in the bigger markets or the glamour markets. The Milwaukee Bucks could not play the cap room game, Chris, and say, well, we've got Giannis and we got Middleton, and if we can just open up one more max slot, Bradley Beal's going to come here in a couple of years, or we'll make a deal for Bradley Beal on the assumption that he'll resign. Or we're going to be the ones to get James Harden, or we're going to be the ones a couple of years ago to try to attract Kyrie to come play with Giannis. No, I'm sorry, it's Milwaukee. There's no template for that working in the modern NBA in a small market. Well, we got the one superstar, others will want to come. No, that's why LeBron left Cleveland in 2010. They couldn't get anybody else. He had to go do it himself. So that's why you end up building with, instead of 2 other superstars, you have Chris Middleton, who's a perennial all-star and very, very good, and Jrue Holiday, who's the guy who we all say every year should have been an all-star 17 times over by now, or however many years it's been. That's the alternate model. Be fortunate enough to draft a guy like Giannis, who you discovered in the middle of the first round and developed, and he became a 2-time MVP, potentially 3-time MVP. We'll see this year. And then get the best possible group around him. You can't hold out to build the super team because it ain't ever going to happen, most likely. So this is their smartest path forward, Chris. And they've built a versatile team that's great at both ends of the court, and that I think is as good a bet to come out of the East as any of the teams we can talk about. As good a bet as Philly, as good a bet as Brooklyn. Everybody's got their flaws. Everybody's got their limitations. Everyone's got their caveats that we can put on them. It's not a given for any of them. And so what's a breakthrough for them? Is it making the conference finals for the first time with this group? Is it making the finals and then losing to the Lakers or the Nuggets or somebody? I don't know. I think as long as they make the conference finals, you can see that they've carved a clear path forward with a really talented group. And the downside is this, of course. They're locked up now. Yeah. As you point out, a lot of money invested in 3 guys. They have no cap room. They have no flexibility. They don't really have picks to work with anymore. So the margin for error is small. But you know what? That's what happens when you become a contender in this league. Every contender, for the most part, ends up maxed out, near or over the tax line, and often out picks because it's all about today. And that's fine. That's what they got to do.
Well, that's the uh-oh moment, right? If they get beat in the second round and they look bad, and all of a sudden you're kind of looking around going, we really don't have any real way to improve this team. We've traded away most of our draft picks. Our cap flexibility is virtually none. I guess we can get guys that might want to come on cheap deals to try to win a championship and for a role alongside Holiday, Middleton, and Giannis. But that's when I ask around the league, that is always kind of the downside. If they get beat in the first or second round and you're kind of looking around going, oh man, this could be a problem with this group. But look, I wrote about, in talking to John Horst of the Bucks a week or so ago, one of the things he kept coming back to was, look, our record doesn't say we're better than last year, but we're better than last year. And I think it's hard to argue with that point. I mean, this team, I think Jrue Holiday is an upgrade over Eric Bledsoe, especially in the playoffs. PJ Tucker, I think, is going to add something to this team in the playoffs. They're a better team. Now, does that mean they can't get beat by Brooklyn in the second round? No, because the Nets are really good. Philadelphia could potentially beat them in the second round. Hell, Miami could beat them in the second round. There's just a lot of good teams at the top of the Eastern Conference, but I think they're improved from what they were last year, and that certainly is at least the best possible outcome to this situation.
And my final thought on this, Chris, is just this: you cannot guarantee yourself in this league that you're going to make the finals, or you certainly cannot guarantee championships. What you can try to assure yourself, if you put together the right group, is being a legit contender year in, year out for a given window of time. And that's what they have. That's what they are now. And more so than they were a year ago. And even if they lose in the second round, I'll agree with you, and I'll agree with John Horst. They're a better team right now. They will be very, very good as long as Middleton and Jrue Holiday, who are later in their career than Giannis is, and Jrue in particular, as long as they're still playing as if they're prime time players, right? Like they'll have a window here. The good news is this: they're in that conversation. That conversation really only involves a handful of teams, and none of them look dynastic. Like, as great as LeBron and Anthony Davis are, those guys are both out right now for weeks. There's no guarantee they're repeating as champions or even repeating as Western Conference champions. The Clippers, well, they've already burned us all once, but they're in this conversation, but that's not some dynasty in the making. The Sixers are not a dynasty in the making. The Nets, maybe? Could they? I mean, they could win multiple because they've got that kind of high-end talent across 3 positions. But we still, we've barely seen the Nets whole, much less in a best-of-7 series against other elite teams. So let's not get too carried away with that. So my point is the Bucks have a window here, and in the time that they have that window, the next 3, 4, 5 years, there's nobody standing the way that you can say is far and away or even distinctly better than they are. They will be in this conversation every year for the foreseeable future.